that's me. I'm the founder of Purposely. So Purposely is a volunteer management / recruitment platform. So we're located right here in Canada, right across from BCIT. I have a master's in public policy, about 7 years in the IT sector, longtime volunteer, previous board member, and I love trying out new digital tools, hence kind of creating this volunteer platform. And so we're going to explore some of these tools together. I get nervous at these, so I'm going to kind of pass it on to you guys. Everyone's going to talk a little bit about the different pain points that you experience as volunteer coordinators or donor relationship managers. Talk about the different tools that you guys use, and ideally kind of collaborate a little bit within this process. So as we explore these, we don't want to overwhelm our teams, right? They'll make you regret it, as my team made me regret it. There's some hair on me. So what is a tech stack? A closer look at your digital tools. So there's the idea of an old school tech stack, right? So from many years ago. So tech stack, we can define as digital tools that your organization uses, ranging from communications to CRM solutions. So kind of everything Jai was talking about. And the old way of doing this was that they solved only simple problems. So simple communication, typically spreadsheets, things like that. They were often frustrating and they tended to be a bit expensive. The Newschool stack, or this modern tech stack, tends to be, there's an abundance of them. They help solve complex problems. So which I was talking about a few years ago, CRM was not even popular. Now all of a sudden many people in the room utilize CRM. So they're these affordable solutions to some of these complex problems when dealing with customers or different relationships. They're affordable, and while legacy tools do exist, there are these no training required solutions. So a lot of these solutions out there actually don't really require somebody to come train you. Tools like that do exist, but there's so many new tools that are catering with this sector in particular. And we'll kind of go through some of those. So how do you actually reevaluate your tech stack? So I kind of wanted to go through a few steps that I've noticed. We talked to a lot of different nonprofits, a lot of charities, and these have been kind of key for them to adopt not just our software, but a variety of different software, whether it's donor management, things like that. So first off, you have to identify if there's a real need or if you can refine your current process. That's kind of what I want to get into a little bit today, is do you actually need a new solution? Do you need a digital solution? Or do you have something in place that you're currently using that's working and maybe just need to refine that system? Maybe you need to bring somebody else in. However that works, identify that before kind of getting bogged down and adding all these new tools. Get buy-in from stakeholders. This one is probably the most important. If switching to a new volunteer management system, for example, talk to your volunteers first. Always talk to everybody who's involved. Some of the most successful organizations on our platform spoke to their volunteers. I literally went to their volunteers, spoke to them, they all voted, and were like, yes, we want to use this platform. And then they were the most successful users of the platform. So it's really important that whoever the stakeholder is, whether it's communications in your office, make sure everybody's on board with that platform. And start small. So whether it's donor management, volunteer management, start with one of your programs. If you have multiple programs, multiple ongoing roles, all that kind of stuff, start with one, see if it's successful, then kind of scale from there. And so, yeah, a lot of organizations that we worked with that kind of follow this process, start small. They might use our software for just one program that they're running, try it out, see if it works. If it does, great, move on. And so, kind of want to go through challenges that you overcome when we explore them together, right? So I'm sure many of you have challenges that you're facing digitally with your organization, whether project management, volunteer management, donor relations, all that kind of stuff, external, internal communications. So I wanted to go through some of those, kind of pull the room a little bit and see who has solutions. I'll provide solutions that we found work really, really well at the end. But I kind of want to see for the room, what are some of the pain points that you're experiencing now? And if anybody has solutions to those pain points or problems. Does anybody have like some kind of problem they're facing as a nonprofit in terms of any of these types of things, or anything else you can think of, project management, all that? Any kind of issues that people are experiencing? Yeah, for sure.
One of the big ones we face is we know we need a piece of tech to solve a problem.
Yeah.
And try to get funding from a funder when you don't really know what it's going to cost, and you also don't have the data to support it, but you know what you need and based on your experience. So it's building an argument, I guess. You need the tech to be able to collect the data to show that you need the tech. I get sort of that.
Right.
But it's making that first step before you can actually start to collect data to show that you needed it.
I see. So particularly in fundraising too. Is that the idea?
No, not in
This is-
fundraising at all, actually. I'm thinking more, we're in the middle of this problem right now, and we are starting to make some headway, but ours was around building a new online community.
Oh, okay, cool.
Our existing online community is 22 years old, and using the same tools throughout, which we've done really well with. But knowing, and I've been part of that online community for 22 years, so I knew it really well.
Yeah.
So I knew what we needed. But then convincing our funder of that when you don't have the data because the tech you're currently using isn't robust enough to collect the data.
For sure. Yeah, and some of that, depending on who's involved in that community, could just be anecdotal in the beginning, right? That's how a lot of this starts.
Yeah, and then it's
kind of,
like, well, that's just people saying things.
That's just people saying that-
They don't put
yep.
the same amount of value.
For sure.
They like to see a number, even though that number really is you can manipulate it.
Totally.
B isn't really telling them what they think that number tells them, but you give them numbers because it makes them happy. But you
For
know
sure.
it's worthless, right? And the stories that people share, there's
Completely.
more value in that, but because they can't be
Doesn't have the actual
graphed,
data.
charted, and calculated, they don't put as much stock in it.
Does anybody else have a similar problem kind of working with trying to get data to kind of demonstrate that there's a need for a particular problem, but all you have is kind of this anecdotal evidence? Anybody else facing a similar kind of?
Yeah, we kind of
Yeah.
have a similar thing that happens all the time, that we
Sure.
collect a whole bunch of data, like our tech collects a whole bunch of data, and
Yeah.
make sure we collect the stuff we need or that we use it correctly, etc. But the challenge that we have is we have a whole bunch of data, which is great, it's measurable, but what our funders frequently want is the narrative. And
Totally.
so trying to get the data to give us a narrative is really challenging.
It can be difficult.
Really
Yeah.
challenging.
Yep.
But it's possible in a way.
For sure. And you expressed something
That's
similar?
the opposite almost of what, they want the data, not the narrative. They
Yeah.
want the narrative, not the data.
Yeah, which makes complete sense. And I don't know if this is one of those things, again, going back, maybe start small. See if, as you're moving to some of these other tools, starting with a very small piece of that community, identifying it, see if it does work for them, and then kind of moving on to the broader
Yeah, that's what
community.
we've been doing over the last
Cool.
2 years. I was just wondering if there's any ways to jump a bit forward.
Yeah, and if
It's-
anybody-
It's working.
Yeah.
Approach, but-
Yeah, and kind of which I was mentioning too after this. Hopefully, if other people are identifying with the same problem,
Mhm.
please, right? Talk amongst yourselves and kind of communicate this. Really important. Any other kind of pain points that any organizations are experiencing that, yeah, for sure.
So I don't work for a nonprofit, but some of the nonprofits I worked with have silos of data. So for example, we have great member data, but their donor management
Completely.
data is completely separate and different, and they have duplication between them.
Yep.
And sometimes they don't have duplication. So they might be reaching out to, for instance, a member and asking them to donate when they're already paying monthly.
For sure.
So it's quite embarrassing for these organizations. And this data is really important to them, but they're really not leveraging it properly.
Yep.
So that was something
Yep.
I was seeing a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And so there's actually, if there isn't a solution, so if you're maybe using one donor management platform and you're using another to keep track of member engagement, I don't know if anybody in here is familiar with hackathons, because this idea of siloing data is actually quite important. A lot of software doesn't connect with each other, but there are these things. So TTT Studios here downtown host a hackathon, and there's a bunch of them all throughout Vancouver. You can basically get software developers, and this is kind of where volunteerism comes into play. There's a lot of software developers out there who want to develop skills, who want to gain, practical experience by helping out your organization. So basically, you can apply to these hackathons if you need some data connected, if you need data analyzed, if you need something built specifically for your organization. Check out these hackathons in town. They exist and they're really good. And you develop a relationship with a software developer as a volunteer who can kind of help build this stuff for you. Any other kind of problems before we kind of move on a little bit? Any other pain points that organizations are experiencing? Volunteer, donor management, things like that?
Can I ask a question, Eric?
Please, yeah.
How do you help organisations work out the scope of the tools that they need? So the need of an organisation with 20 volunteers versus somebody with 200 or 1,000 volunteers is quite different. How do you help them
Yeah, it's a good point.
define the scope of the tool they need?
Yep, so it's really about kind of what pain are they experiencing within that. So if your organization has 10, 20 volunteers, same on the donor side, if you can handle it within a spreadsheet, if you can use current tools, again, like TechSoup, organizations like that offer these for free, essentially, deeply, deeply discounted. And so whether you're using G Suite, Excel, anything like that, to keep track on a spreadsheet, typically you can get by, right, if you have 10, 20 volunteers. And again, it's talking to the volunteer coordinator, talking to the volunteers. Are they getting the most out of this experience? Are they not receiving emails from you? Is there any kind of break in the chain in terms of you being effectively kind of managing those volunteers and galvanizing them? And so if there is, then it's kind of time to look at some of these solutions. Or if it really is a small number, kind of see if you can refine that process. Is there a better way to communicate with your volunteers? But I think, again, like, it's feedback is the most important thing. Talk to the stakeholders, talk to the people directly involved. If there's 50 volunteers, you find that only half are showing up to events, communicate with them, see what's happening. If it is a breakdown and technology can solve it, then look towards technological solutions. So it really is dependent on the organization. But kind of as a general rule, if you're going beyond 20, 30, whatever it is, donors, volunteers, anything like that, it's probably a good idea to look at some kind of digital solution, because it's going to help your workflow. It's going to save you a ton of time. And that's really what all these digital solutions are all about. It's kind of saving you time so you can kind of go work on your cause, the thing that you care about most. Anything else before I kind of rattle off a few? Yeah, please.
Yeah, so our big problem is really all four of those things wrapped up together.
For sure, yeah.
I'm from the Association of Neighborhood Houses in BC, and so we have 10 different locations, we'll just call them that. And so getting all this information from each of those houses, sharing it in the same database is what we're doing right now with SUMAC, and it was rolled out in 2016. I wasn't there for that. There was no training there, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's really, people have just gotten in the habit of doing things a certain way, and the ability to pull a report that makes any sense really doesn't exist. It's more so we're just scraping by, meeting our needs of, say, printing tax receipts and things like this. But
for sure,
it's really, we're just like, we feel like we're right at ground zero.
Yeah, we actually talked to a number of organizations kind of in the same situation, where they have all these different chapters, and they want those chapters to communicate with each other. How many organizations here have multiple chapters within your organization that need to communicate or kind of have this siloing of information? Is there a number in here? Not so much? Okay, a few. So we run into this too. Same thing, whether it's SUMAC, any of this kind of software, donor software. I think, again, starting small. So we work with Cystic Fibrosis Canada. So we work with just 2 of their chapters at the moment, and the idea is to expand that beyond. But they kind of get into a very clear flow, and then they train the additional chapters. So we've noticed that with a number of organizations that we've worked with. And so it really depends. Some are kind of more critical than others, but so volunteer management, donor relations, oftentimes you want that communication between different chapters. Sometimes it's okay if maybe accounting, right, is just handled from the head office. They take care of all that. But ideally, you're starting small. And I know I keep reiterating that, but it's been so effective in the organizations we've spoken to. Because we do partner with donor relationship like Gila, some local organizations, and the same strategy has been highly effective, especially organizations with multiple chapters. Any other kind of issues, pain points? No. So I'll go through some ones that I recommend. So I kind of identified a few different categories: external, internal communications, donor-member relations, volunteer and event management, documentation management, task and project, and accounting. And so my favorite tech. So external communications, really it depends on how you're communicating with volunteers. How many organizations here offer remote work of some kind? Yeah, so it's probably 5-10 years ago, no one would have raised their hand. Now we have solutions for that. So video calls, 5 years ago, video calls were terrible. Now they're awesome, right? So you can have Zoom meetings, you can have Hangouts. Many different people can talk in the same video chat, so it's a great way to be able to stay in contact. And that's where these tools actually become really, really important, is in remote work. Chapters are one thing. When the actual individuals themselves are just working from home and now everybody needs to collaborate, all these tools become really, really important. And again, things like TechSoup, there's a lot of low-cost solutions out there, especially now. It didn't always used to be the case. So email, video calls, MailChimp. So depending if you're sending newsletters, how do you actually communicate with people external to you? MailChimp, there's a variety of solutions that are out there for that. And again, MailChimp, all that free, right? If you have under, I believe, 10,000 contacts. Internal communications, I think Jai mentioned Microsoft Teams. Again, if you have an Office 365 subscription. Slack is a great one, also free. I think, again, like 10,000 messages you have for free. And so great for, and again, maybe use it for a small team, and then kind of roll it out across the organization. But a really, really good way, especially for remote work, to keep in contact with everyone. You can share images, links, videos, all that kind of stuff directly in here, having attachments directly in Slack, and it stores all the information.
Can I just add something about Slack?
Please, yeah.
Our organization uses Slack, and what I found is that it dramatically cuts down the amount of email that you get.
Sure, yeah.
And, it's not, hey, do you have time to, send an email anymore? Hey, do you have time to talk about this for 5 minutes? You actually talk about it, or at least get it off your desk, get it onto somebody else's desk. But it significantly reduces the amount of email, which is, I think, fantastic.
Yeah, and you can have these channels. I mean, how many people in here already use Slack? I'm assuming quite a few. Yeah, okay, a lot of organizations. So anyone that doesn't, having the channels, Microsoft Teams does the same thing. You can kind of do if you're talking about donors, it's so important to segment that information so you know exactly where to go when you're communicating. Donor member relations. So I mentioned these guys really briefly. Keela. Is anybody familiar with Keela? Yeah, great. So local company here, and we've worked with them in the past, but they have really inexpensive but very, very powerful AI-driven, I know a little buzzwordy, donor relationship management that's super, super effective. Great people that work there. Volunteer and event management, us. There's plenty of other people out there. If you're a large organization, better impact. Again, I'd probably categorize that more of the legacy type software. A little bit difficult to use, a little bit cumbersome, slightly outdated. But again, for multiple chapters, organizations like that, it can be really, really effective. Does require a bit of training, so it's very difficult to use. Document management. Is anybody familiar with Notion? So this is, again, for teams, really, really, really effective. There's a few different pieces of software out there like this, but basically everybody on the team is accessing this database. So we talked a bit about databases, pulling reports. Essentially, you can do anything in Notion. There's this kind of movement towards, has anybody heard of no-code? It's okay. You've heard of it, yeah. So the idea is that you don't have to be a developer to create really robust solutions to your problems. Notion is one of those tools that's kind of falling in line. Airtable's another. This idea of no-code. And so basically with Notion, you can store databases. It can act as your CRM. Everybody has access to it. You can pull reports from it. Really, really powerful software, but it's as powerful as you want to make it. You can use it for just simple purposes, sharing notes between people, keeping track of documentation, all that, but really great tool. And for nonprofits, I believe it's entirely free, as long as you have a registered nonprofit charity. So again, very low cost for a lot of these solutions. In Google Drive or Office 365 or any of those, again, good solutions. Task and project management. How many organizations, I think already asked, but how many use project management software of any kind? Okay, not too many. Okay. So is anybody familiar with Asana, any of these? Yeah. Really good team tools. Again, nonprofit discounts. Almost all these pieces of software have some kind of educational, nonprofit, charitable discount. Asana is really great for keeping track of tasks, assigning people to different projects, keeping track of all those projects. Especially with remote work, this becomes really important. Trello uses that Kanban style, so you can kind of move cards between different stages in a project, a really visual way to keep track of project management. And there's so many other tools that do project management. If something doesn't work for you, again, start small. Try out some of these tools with maybe small programs that you're running. If any of them in particular work well, weigh the pros and cons, all that. And then kind of run it across the organization, get more people involved. And accounting. So accounting is probably the one I know least about, but we've been recommended Xero and FreshBooks. Is anybody familiar with different accounting software? Xero? Yeah.
I've used FreshBooks before, but my team, we just switched. We're using Sage Cloud now because myself and my CFO, we're in the accounting department. We work remotely from each other.
Cool.
So with Sage Cloud, we can be entering data at the exact same time.
Yeah,
and our
awesome.
director can also access it remotely.
Yeah, which is super important. So all these, everything I'm recommending here, that as well, offers those collaborative tools, especially as remote work, multiple chapters. People just tend to work from home much more anyway. And even within the office, it's just good to have everybody on the same page, everybody able to collaborate on the same document, same accounting software, whatever it happens to be. And there's tools that are out there for essentially free. And thank you.